Welcome to Simply Verified Beef, the podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Bree Patterson from the west coast of BC, and
I'm Amy Higgins and the VBP Coordinator on the alternative coast in New Brunswick.
Excellent. So welcome everyone to another episode of the Simply Verified Beef podcast. And today's episode is all about mentorship. So I've got three wonderful guests today, and I'll let them introduce themselves. So Scott, how about you jump in?
Sure. Thanks, Bree. Scott Gerbrandt here from Swift Current, Saskatchewan. I'm representing the mentee on this discussion. I've spent the last year in the CYL program, so that's my most recent exposure to mentorship.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. So for those not familiar with CYL, that's the acronym for Cattlemen's Young Leaders Program. And we'll definitely dive into that more in the future as we continue on. Hey, Sandy, do you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, Bree, and thanks for having me here. I'm Sandy Russell. I'm a consultant out of central Saskatchewan, near Outlook, Saskatchewan. I've been in the beef industry in various roles for probably more of a mentorship age or mentor age bracket than a mentee, I hate to admit, but for many years in various roles, I have an economic background and really interested in the industry and interested in engaging youth in industry, which is why I have played various roles as a mentor within the beef cattle industry, but also I've had some fabulous mentors myself and been fortunate and continue to have that. So mentorship is always a topic that's very dear to my heart.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandy. And fun fact, Sandy was my mentor when I did Cattlemen's Young Leaders, aka CYL.
Yes.
And Jess, do you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bree. So my name's Jessica Radau, and I'm the Youth Leadership Coordinator at the Canadian Cattlemen's Association, based out of their Calgary office. And I live in central Alberta, near Bowden, at my husband's family farm there. Parts of my role at the Canadian Cattlemen's Association is helping coordinate the Cattlemen's Young Leaders Program, which is a lot of fun. I was a participant in 2018 with Bree. That's when we first met there. And I also get to help out with their Young Cattlemen's Council, which is kind of a junior board of the CCA, for lack of better words. But yeah, so mentorship, such an important role in seeing it firsthand, and excited to dive into it today.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. As you guys can all hear, we've got three great speakers with all kinds of cool backgrounds to help weigh in on the topic of mentorship. I've got a few questions curated, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on it. So the first one is, where do you find mentors? I know we've briefly mentioned CYL and YCC, Young Cattlemen's Council. So I'll let you guys jump in with where you would find a mentor. Are they growing on trees? Are they in wheat fields? Do you find them in a barn?
Yeah, so with I guess I'll start off biasly with the Cattlemen's Young Leaders Program. For a bit of background for some people who might not be familiar with it, is it's a national program under the Canadian Cattlemen's Association that dates back to 2010. So it's for people ages 18 to 35 all across Canada, in really all areas of the beef supply chain too, not limited just to producers. We've seen all kinds of young people come through. What it does is pairs them with the mentor off for a 9-month period and offers them a $2,000 budget to put towards some different learning opportunities, traditionally travel. And since the program started back in 2010, we've seen over 120 young people go on into different leadership roles. So it's lots of fun. And I think that formal mentorship structure, is really helpful to get a taste of it. In this whole conversation of mentorship too, I mean, often when people come to us by the ages of 18 to 35, is chances they've already had people mentoring them along the way in that journey. Mentors for me has definitely been through the 4-H program, some neighbors of different areas of the beef industry that helped me get into that. Through the CYL program in 2018, I was matched with Diane Finstead, who's a communications and journalist specialist. So yeah, I guess that's my first tidbit.
I'll maybe jump in, Bree, because I think Jess has given a great overview of a wonderful program that's near and dear to my heart, formal mentorship program, and one that when it started. I hate to admit I was around when it started and too old to enter the program, probably. Was so thrilled to see a formal mentorship program happen. But when I was young, and why I supported the formal one so much was I didn't have that. And as someone who is a bit more introverted and shy, starting in the beef industry, it was very intimidating to go into the professional world and not have something like that. So I think those programs are wonderful, but I also have benefited from those informal mentorships that Jess talks about. You know, I had some great mentors through my education, through university, through, you know, at home, neighbors, relatives, friends who had expertise in certain areas that I saw I wanted to strengthen in. I think it's about seeking out those areas where you really acknowledge that, I'd like to be a bit better in that area, and find the person, or, you know, that person that you maybe go, man, I wish I could be more like that, or I wish I could learn skills that that person has. And don't be shy. I have never approached anyone, as hard as it was for me at times, approached anyone and said, you know, I'd really like to learn more in this area, or would you be willing to help me out a bit in this area? Where someone didn't say, absolutely, I'd be thrilled to help. I think mentors can happen in any area of our lives and in so many informal ways. When I look back now, there were people mentoring me that I didn't realize were mentoring me at the time, and I benefited immensely from that.
I think that's a great point. Scott, do you have anything else to add?
Jessica touched on the formal mentorship that CYL provides, but in prepping for this, I listed a few different mentors that I've had over the years, a list of about 10 people. And the formal mentor that I was assigned, Brent Diffley, through the CYL program, was one of the formal mentors, but the rest of them were all informal. And I was kind of surprised that people that have influenced my life through mentorship, some of them are my best friends that you wouldn't think of as a mentor. They're just your friend. But most of my knowledge in the cattle industry has come from really good friends that were in the industry before me. And that's where I've learned a lot of techniques and different ideas that we employ on our farm now.
That's awesome. And I think that encompasses that we can find mentors anywhere, in the barn, in the wheat field, wherever they're out and about, not lurking in a bad way, but they're ready to share their knowledge and communicate and connect with you, right? So I think that really does a great job of explaining where you find a mentor, if it's formal or informal, if it's more casual, like a friendship, like you mentioned, Scott, or if it's more of a structured formal mentorship program like CYL. That's great too. And I know there are other formal mentorships out there for different commodities and in different industries as well. So obviously we're focusing on beef. This is a beef podcast, but if you're chiming in and you produce a different commodity, take a quick Google search, ask your association in your province or your territory or your state, whomever's listening to this, and see if there's something like CYL out there for you. I guess our next question, to kind of keep on the mentorship theme, is how do you become a mentor? So maybe Jess and Sandy, you can kind of weigh in from having been a mentor and how a industry association is going to source a mentor.
Well, I'll maybe start, Jess, and you can talk from the program itself. I think the first thing is a willingness to want to interact with people. I have said this, and I think maybe, Bree, I'm getting down the path of, but I benefited every time I have been involved in mentorship. And I'm, like I said, I was a little before the age where mentorship was really coming on stream as a formal thing. So my key role has been as a mentor. And I've learned more from my mentees than sometimes I feel like I've given as a mentor. And I continue to. You broaden my networks, you challenge my thought processes, you keep me young and agile in the industry, I say sometimes, and build lifelong connections. Bree and I still interact regularly on an ongoing basis. And so as someone who wants to engage in the industry and really believes in agriculture and the future of agriculture, and CYL is a great example. They've had some fabulous mentors. I think if you're vested in the industry, you're setting yourself up to be a mentor, and whether formal or informal. And I've been involved in a couple different programs, not just CYL formally, but also would, be thrilled if anyone said to me, and I've listed people publicly sometimes who were mentors who didn't realize they were mentors for me, that I think it's just about giving back to the industry. And if you have a willingness, and I know within agriculture that's ingrained in us, we believe in the future of agriculture and in the youth coming up. I don't know many people who don't in this industry. So to be a mentor is just, whether formal or informal, to give just a piece of yourself. And when you do that, you get a lot more in return.
That's great, Sandy. Jess, do you have anything to weigh in on that?
I think those are excellent points. And I think it's neat too, is, we look at mentorship. I think there's often the conception of are you transitioning from mentee to mentor? But in our relationships, you never really stop being a mentee at whatever stage in your career, and the people you meet are those peer relationships. So you never really know, like Sandy said, who might be looking at you as a mentor. I mean, luckily, I'm still very early in my career stage, so I can't say that I've really mentored, people, but lots of people have been mentors to me. But through the program, when we do it formally, it's one of the exciting parts that we do around that September timeframe when the new program participants come in, is that we host different calls with some different industry stakeholders and program sponsors, people with big networks in the ag industry. And we have our program participants come on and outline their goals, how a mentor might help them, their specific areas of interest. And then through those connections and contacts, we kind of disperse and start contacting these people and see who might be willing. And the really fun and rewarding part of that, and why I love working in the agriculture industry, is when you contact these people, 9 times out of 10, they are just so excited to jump in and mentor someone right away. And most of the time, even if they're not, it's usually time, but they're so flattered to be thought of, in that regard. So that's a really exciting part, through the program. And if anybody's listening and, is looking for that time commitment, or maybe wanting to step into a formal relationship with the young person in the beef industry, they can definitely reach out to me through our Cattlemen's Young Leaders website. It's so helpful to just have a list of names of people that have expressed interest in that. Yeah, I think even the simple little things that you can do, if it's not a formal relationship, it doesn't have to be a relationship that lasts a really long time in order to reach back and just respond or to an email or provide advice, and little tidbits here and there that you can still be helping and mentoring people.
Really like how you described how you talk with the participants and you kind of glean what kind of information they're looking for. Then you help play matchmaker. So Scott, I'm wondering if you could kind of weigh in on maybe high level, or if you want to get a little personal and let us know what you were looking for exactly in a mentor. But what were some of the things you asked for in the CYL program for a mentor? What were you looking for in a mentor?
Yeah, that was the toughest part of the whole program, was trying to narrow down an industry that you love, trying to narrow down one segment that you want to be mentored in. But I gave them a challenge, I guess, and listed out all the areas, which for me, I was interested in research. I was fairly new to the industry since 2015 is when we got into it. I've been doing a lot of reading in the beef research publications and the results of research. So the research side of things intrigued me. I'm also a professional engineer outside of the beef industry. So that side of research and whatnot was that was where I was oriented. I'm also really interested in forage. I did have some exposure to forage growing as a kid on the farm, and that's something we still do to this day. So that's how I ended up with Brent as my mentor. I was also interested in the economics and business management side of the beef industry. And that's, after being in it for a few years, that was one area that I definitely needed to improve upon. So that was a focus for me the last year, and Brent's been good in that regard too. So.
I agree. It's really hard to narrow it down. I think my list was multi-tiered as well. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but there's definitely many different tiers. Like, all right, CYL team, here's what I want. Can you create it for me? And they gave me Sandy, which was great. So I was quite happy with who I got paired with.
Yeah. I have to say, Bree, initially I was like, where's the connection? And sometimes that's the best mentorships, right? Having now been involved in the Agribition, Canadian Western Agribition, as a mentorship program that I was involved in, helping them pair people. And sometimes, what you ask for isn't necessarily, we'd sit as a committee and go, well, I know that's what that person asked for, but they really need somebody to help them here. You can see from the outside that this is an area that they really need to work upon. And so sometimes those pairings, and I'm sure, Jessica, you've had this in your program, where people go, are you sure that's the right person for me? And those are often the mentorship pairings that you get the most out of. And I have to say, Bree, I think ours was successful. I don't know. You can say whether or not you felt it was, and Jess can say whether CYL feels it was. But I found it very successful, and continue to enjoy to learn from Bree.
I would echo that as well. And I think it is quite ironic, like you mentioned, like you get paired, and from the outside looking in, like me as someone wanting a mentor, I'm like, here's my laundry list of what I want. But sometimes you have blinders on because you're so focused on one topic or another topic. So when you have people who are kind of evaluating you going, well, I actually know Bree pretty well. And so she might actually be better fit with this mentor, or I know Scott really well and he'd be better fit with that mentor. So I totally understand that. And I have a bit of a laugh because I can think of some past CYLers who were paired, and I think they did have an enjoyable pairing, but they got paired with a competitive breeder, right? So I can think of some, anti-Hereford people who were paired with a Hereford person. No hate to Herefords. I love them.
But pushing us out of our box is a good thing, though.
Totally, right? Regardless if it's hating on Herefords or it's learning about economics, I think it's really important to connect with people outside of your regular sphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And no, that's honestly exactly. I swear you're on our calls here, Sandy. Is that's what we see happening. But I think the neat part is that everyone is so well connected in this tight ag industry that, maybe they're interested in this part and we see them building skills in another area, but this mentor is still going to have access to contacts or people that they connect them in what they've identified. But I mean, sometimes we have people, that are listing different mentors, and then, we come back to them and they're like, I didn't even know this person was out there. And this matches up so well. Or, in both cases, and at the end of the year, they have a good laugh. But yeah, honestly, one of the highlights, I don't know what your reaction was, Scott, when we sent you your email, or what did you feel?
Bree described it pretty well, actually. I remember last September and trying to list out my interests and what area I wanted to be mentored in. I also had a list of about a half a dozen people that I had read about in the industry, or they'd released a blog post or a publication. So I was aware of these people, but I decided not to bring them up and just leave the selection committee try to match me up with somebody. So Brent wasn't on my list. And turns out he's fairly close. His ranch is fairly close to ours in Saskatchewan, and he has quite a big network and is knowledgeable or at least exposed to all the areas that I was wanting to get mentored in. So I still have the option, I think, as far as I'm concerned, to reach out to the other half a dozen people that were on my list and still try to improve upon the areas that they might have expertise. So that might be next year's project.
And I think that's a great attitude to have with mentorship is, okay, I had my pairing, I had my formal mentorship, but I still have other people I want to learn from. How can I reach out and connect with them and get to know them better and find ways, to be mentored or be in a mentorship type relationship with them, which kind of transitions to another question about mentorship and on your ranch or farm or your ag enterprise of any kind. So like with me and Sandy, my ag enterprise is not a farm or ranch. It was a communications company that I was in the process of building. And then I eventually decided to dismantle. It was a great learning opportunity. So I guess, Scott, since you are our mentee on this call, how did Brent help you on your operation?
Good question. I guess one of my goals for the mentorship was to do the types of jobs we do in the wintertime, the business planning and trying to make the right management decisions. And whether it's right or wrong, I guess we kept kind of coming back to the fact that cow-calf business is quite difficult to be very profitable. There's some scale issues and different challenges, I guess. Every ranch is a little bit different. So one of the things that came out of my mentorship was just realizing the challenges that we have here on this property and on our ranch and in our operation. And so I think over the next couple of years, we'll probably transition a little bit to not be 100% cow-calf and have a little bit more backgrounding type of operation. So it's a little bit more diversified that way. And I think cash flow should be improved, and we shouldn't have the same economic outlay in cow ownership. We shouldn't have as much money tied up in cow ownership as we would in yearlings maybe. So that's one direction I think we're going to go, is to diversify a little bit.
And do you think you got to that end goal quicker having a mentor, or do you think you would have gotten to the end goal anyways without a mentor?
It was nice to have the mentorship. The way we set it up was a weekly phone call, just recurring every Tuesday morning. So I also had this plan kind of in motion before the mentorship started. So there was different courses I took this winter. CYL program helped with a lot of those. And as I was taking the courses, I discussed the things that we learned in the past week with Brent, and we'd go over a few different concepts. There was one that comes to mind is a SWOT analysis, or the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I'd never heard of it or been exposed to it before. And Brent was quite familiar with it. So we just chatted about that one week, and it was interesting to list them out on paper and see what you think is working against you and what's working for you, and opportunities and threats. And so that was kind of interesting.
No, and I think that's great that you had that reoccurring call with him, and that was part of your schedule and part of your mentorship. I know everyone's mentorship looks a little bit different. I know me and Sandy, I think, connected on a phone call monthly, and then we're always in communication through text or email. But yeah, it's tailored to your operation. If that's a farm or ranch or an ag enterprise of some kind, it's very uniquely fitted to the mentee and the mentor and their wants and needs in the relationship.
I think it's interesting too, as Scott was mentioning, just getting that different perspective of what's been working on other operations or different places. And that's one of the fun parts of CYL and having that peer network too, is that you get to hear about these success stories on operations, all across Canada, or what's working in this province or another one, and just picking up on some of those different perspectives.
Mm-hmm. As I would become aware of some of the things that were maybe in the threat column or the weakness column of our business, just in Brent's experience, he's got his ranch near Moose Jaw, and he's got family, I think, in the US, and all of his connections through 35 years with Elanco throughout Western Canada. So he could draw on all these experiences that he had and mention, I guess maybe I wasn't the only one that had a weakness in that area or that observed something that was a threat, that it was pretty common, and sometimes there were solutions he had just off the top of his head. So
the important part is that you have a network you can tap into. Just because you're getting tagged into one relationship with a mentor doesn't mean that mentor can't introduce you. Like I know in my situation with Sandy, she introduced me to her business partners, and kind of like you, Scott, we got to sit down and have a chit chat about what we could do better for my business, because they have a business not the same as mine, but again, we would have been more in the similar ballpark than a ag enterprise to a ranch. And so being able to spitball and chit chat about things that maybe you don't get to talk about at the coffee shop row because it's kind of private, or it's stuff that people aren't wanting to advertise about X, Y, and Z in their operation. So having that, behind the scenes, behind closed doors, privacy to pick someone's brain in a professional manner definitely helps to elevate your operation.
Yeah, that was one of the big benefits too, was like you say, the things you can't discuss in a coffee shop. We were able to sit down and kind of compare our numbers even. And it was interesting to see how we each, I guess, run a business essentially.
What are some of the other takeaways you've got? Or again, Sandy and Jess, please weigh in as well. From doing CYL, because I know CYL is much more complex than just here's a mentor, here's a mentee. There's so many cool layers. One of those layers includes you guys have to do the VBP Plus training as part of your mentorship. That's my little VBP Plus plug for this podcast, since we're obviously talking about a fun topic and not one that falls under the 4 pillars. There's a whole bunch more things that go on with CYL, and I would assume other mentorship programs as well. But I guess maybe we could talk about some of those fun aspects that we don't often see when we think of a traditional mentorship of here's mentor, here's mentee.
Lots of it, which has looked, Scott can attest, has looked quite a bit differently in this past little while, but really has been the travel of it, right? And having that budget to go take in different events of your choice. And that can often be used to go take in, a world-class beef industry event with your mentor. Like that's such a cool experience. As we've shifted online, it's been really interesting to see that resiliency and how these young people have still used those funds, whether it's been, Scott can talk about, I know he's invested a lot in management to different training resources that way. People that are in close driving distance have been driving to see their mentors. But I guess on top of that too, of course, the VBP Plus training, which is such a great asset and a good step and introduction for young people to get their foot in the door and, getting their operations verified, which is neat. There's also the Spring Forum, typically in June. It's traditionally held in person, mostly in the Calgary area, where we get all the CYLs together and do different tours and workshops and training. So whether that's been touring the Cargill facility in the past, different feedlot operations, connecting and networking with sponsors. They've done negotiation training in the past, talks about succession planning, so some really interesting topics. In the one year when they organized it for you and I, Bree, when we met with those young chefs from across Canada and did a cooking competition and learned about the beef industry, through their eyes and the people that are prepping that final product for our customers, which was really a unique experience. That one we did do, virtually this past year, but our sponsors have been a big help too in putting on these different webinars and providing speakers, which has been kind of a neat experience where we have this close group of probably about 20 to 30 CYLs on a webinar at a time. And they have that big class, top-notch speaker, but they have access to them on a personal level where it's that small group that they're comfortable in, which has been neat. And that's covered topics like animal nutrition, succession planning, how to set yourself up for success when you're meeting with your banker, some various topics along the way. So it has been lots of fun, but I mean, the fun part too is watching how the CYLs are utilizing that money, whether it's getting media training, seeking out that kind of thing. And there's really some neat resources out there. One invested in with her mentorship. They were focused on sustainable grazing and ranch management, but they actually found a common interest along the way in stock dogs. So part of it that she got this puppy throughout the mentorship, and then they're kind of on the side of their goals was training the stock dog together and, putting some resources towards a few books and stuff. But I mean, just fun little things that come out of it, which is really neat to watch unfold.
I think that's a critical piece, Bree, you bring up is so often when you talk mentorship, people talk about the network and building your network. And that's such a valuable piece of why people do mentorship and why mentorship is so important, because it definitely does exponentially increase. I say for both mentee and mentor, it increases your network. But the education component to me is what, and having been even on the mentor side of these programs, some of the education component we get to experience in the past that maybe wouldn't have been open to us, or we wouldn't have taken the time if we didn't invest our time with our mentee to do this. It's so critical. And I've, through a couple different mentorship programs, seen some really neat education pieces and broadened my education and the mentee's education. And think there is that whole piece and layer of ongoing learning that is critical that mentorship brings, and having that lens of continual learning is important to your success in any industry.
Totally, I would echo that. Scott, do you have anything else to add?
It's kind of interesting Sandy brings that up. When we had started the mentorship a year ago, one of the goals that I had listed that was kind of squashed by all the travel restrictions that we had, I would have liked to attend Ranching for Profit, but it was only offered in the United States. And so when I mentioned that to Brent as one of the goals of my CYL experience, he was 100% on board that he was going to go with me. And I was kind of surprised to see that. But basically, that's exactly what Sandy just mentioned, that the education component, even though he was my mentor and part of me almost expected him to have all the answers that I was going to learn at Ranching for Profit, he wanted to go there and learn himself. So
I think just speaks to you had a really great mentor, because mentors at any age, people at any age that realize they don't have all the answers and have a lot of learning to do. Those are usually the best pairings and the best resources to learn from each other. So that speaks volumes to your mentor.
Yeah,
I know him, so I can say that. You got a good one.
And it's neat when you can offer some of these educational side pieces too, because when these young people come to you and they're already in that mindset of career and personal development, and they're just like a sponge, they're ready to learn. So then along with that, you've got people that are so eager to take advantage of these resources. So it's a really neat time to throw that in too.
When I think about mentorship, and you mentioned education, and some people do go off to university and college and get education, some people don't. And so if you were to meet someone in the middle of a hayfield and they were in between the ages of 18 and 35, what would you tell them about mentorship? Would you, regardless if you're encouraging them to do CYL or YCC or the agribition one or any of the other commodity ones, what would your sales pitch, for lack of a better description, be to someone about why you should become a mentor and or a mentee? So I'll turn it around for a nice roundtable on this.
If you were to sign up as a mentee, it's kind of a no-brainer, I guess. And the only problem with signing up for a mentee, it's kind of like the saying goes with the tree that the best time to plant a tree was probably 20 years ago. So don't hesitate if you've got any sort of inclination to become a mentee through a formal arrangement, or even the informal one. If you've got a neighbor that you've been looking over their fence maybe for a few years and you've never actually asked them questions about why they're doing things a certain way, or maybe you want to learn. One thing I've noticed is that, like Sandy mentioned again, that everybody's usually pretty keen on sharing their ideas. And I've had people, some people that are my age have been approached by their neighbors, and their neighbors are quizzing them. And these are relatively young people in the ag industry that are being asked to share their knowledge, and they by no means consider themselves to be experts, but somebody's asking them for their knowledge. It really helps them. It makes them feel empowered and makes them feel great. So if you've got any sort of inclination to become a mentee or a mentor, there should be no hesitation, I think.
Sandy, did you have anything to add?
I would just say, standing in a hayfield talking to anybody, I'd say informally do exactly like Scott said. If you've been thinking I should ask or I should reach out, do it and formally seek out these opportunities. They really can propel your learning, propel your network, and the success of your business, your career, whatever it is you're looking to achieve. The formal just has added so much opportunities for youth and for learning in our industry. From those who think they're past the age that can capitalize on mentees, I would say to anybody considering being a mentor, just do it. It's worth your time. The amount of time I have given to mentorship, I always say the return on investment, I'm an economist, I got to put it in those terms. The return on investment has been huge for me personally, for our business. We never hesitate to do it because it just always benefits us and our experiences, our network, our education, like I said, exponentially. So if you're considering being a mentor or you're asked to be a mentor, don't hesitate. I've never encountered anyone who didn't say they got as much as they gave.
That's awesome. And Jess, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, such a good point. I mean, after we ask them what they're doing in our hayfield, then we can ask them, once I get into this elevator pitch, I think the words that Sandy used, like propel, that's what first came to mind, is that's the fast track in your career path. People that have been in your shoes and have gone down that path and want to reach back and help you. But yeah, it's honestly such a phenomenal investment of your time to do that. And I would say, when we were talking first, where do you find a mentor? I think the biggest thing is you're not going to find them in your comfort zone. You have to put yourself out there and get to events. And I think, mentorship, we often, through CYL, I love the formalized program, but I think that can be sometimes intimidating and daunting of thinking of finding a mentor and how do I start this mentorship journey? But I'd tell someone that just start somewhere. It can be an email reaching out to someone you saw online or connecting in the ag Twitter world or at a conference and saying, I really liked what you said. Do you have maybe like half an hour for me to have a virtual coffee or something and pick your brain? And, you don't know where that leads either, but I promise the absolute worst case scenario that's going to happen is that you flattered someone and you made their day. So yeah, that's what I would go with.
I would just add too, Bree, I think those are all great points, but having interacted with a lot of youth who have tried formal mentorship or applied and maybe not been successful the first time, don't give up. This is competitive environment now, which is great, which has strengthened these programs and made them even better. But for those of you, and I've known many who weren't maybe successful the first or even the second time, went out and found a program that they were successful in or kept trying, and along the way kept building their, reached out to me because informal mentorship. And my advice is always, don't get disheartened by maybe you didn't make the cut. Keep trying and keep learning and reaching out. Sometimes when we, put ourselves out there, you're not always going to get picked right away. It's well worth your effort. And like I said, this is a competitive environment. So it's all experiences. So keep trying. That's what I would say to those who maybe don't make it on the first chance.
Echo Sandy's thoughts there. What we see in the CYL program is sometimes our, second time applicants coming in, we have such a high acceptance rate of them. And some have even given us feedback that they're glad that they had that year, because then they really got to narrow in on what specifically they wanted to learn in their mentorship or had some time to put that thought in, and then have gone on to do just incredible things. So yeah, would encourage anyone, no matter what program it is or, whatever life scenario, just keep on applying and keep trying.
Yeah, that's the key portion, is to keep going, keep progressing, keep trying. So I feel like we've covered so many questions and we could chat about this topic for eons. So I'm going to open up one last time for any last kind of comments. And I guess I'm going to add one last fun fact about VP and CYL. I think half of them, the VBP coordinators across the country, are CYL graduates, and there's a large chunk that graduated together. So that's kind of fun to see, like how we came up through the industry in different capacities, and we have merged and are coordinators for this fabulous national program. But yeah, I'd like to open it up one last time to you guys. And thank you so much for all your expertise and your personal experience weighing in on this topic. Yeah, I'll open it up. Scott, Sandy, Jessica, if anyone's got anything else to add, we'd love to hear it.
One thing I'll add, Brent had mentioned in our mentorship, I think right on the very first call, that it was 100% up to the mentee to set it up, to draw the information, I guess, out of the mentor. So whether it's informal or formal, I guess that rule, I think, would stand, that if you have an area that you want to be mentored in, it's 100% up to you to go out and find somebody to mentor you. And I think what we've said on this podcast is that there's a lot of people, virtually 100% of the people out there would be willing to share their knowledge. So if you have one of those areas identified that you need to fill some gaps, don't hesitate.
I would just add to some of Scott's comments there. I think that's an excellent point. And I think once you do find a mentor, that communication is so important, and having that bit of structure, if that is possible and something you're interested in, is a huge help. But of course, it is those informal mentorships like we talked today that can be such a key part, in that growth experience. But I think I would thank too all of the people in the industry that have invested their time as mentors, formal, informal. Sandy, I know you've been a mentor of the CYL program quite a few times. I think that's why the ag industry is such a neat one to be a part of, is the people that are so willing to help that next generation. And I think we're really setting ourselves up for some future success within the industry. But if anyone is interested in the CYL program, I guess I'll put in a shameless plug that from January through until March is when applications are open annually, and those can be found on our website at cattlemenyoungleaders.com. And once again, that's for ages 18 to 35, and it's anyone interested in all aspects of the beef supply chain. But yeah, thanks so much, Bree.
That's awesome.
Say no such thing as a shameless plug on a podcast. So, but Sandy,
I was just going to say, Jess, be proud, because I think I think the beef industry leads ag in a lot of areas, but man, we really have led on mentorship, and that's thanks to your leadership and CCA's leadership with the CYL program. It's done phenomenal things in a very short time, and something I'm always proud to say I've got to benefit from and participate in here and there from every once in a while. I would just reiterate what both Scott and Jess said, Bree, is mentorship has been so critical to my success. It's so critical to everyone's success. And as just mentioned, I've been involved as a mentor for a few different people, and I maintain, Bree being one of them, connection and interaction with those people to this day. And it becomes more of a peer relationship after you're done mentorship, because I maintain that I'm learning as much from them. But it's so great to see that you've given something and you've got something back for that. And I would just say that the formal aspect is wonderful, but that informal piece that I have benefited from, and I'm like Scott, I have my list of people and today, as I take on new initiatives, I've got mentors out there today that I could list in this industry that are showing me the way and helping me learn things today that I didn't know yesterday. I think whether you put the label on it or not, it's really beneficial to your success to reach out to people and interact with as many as you can.
I think that's a great note to end on. So Scott, Sandy, Jess, thank you so much for joining in for a Simply Verified Beef podcast on mentorship. You guys have been great weighing in, and it's great to see people who have done the VBP Plus training be on my podcast. So with that, thank you all for chiming in to Simply Verified Beef, the podcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns about VBP Plus, make sure you reach out to our website, www.verifiedbeef.ca, or go search out your local coordinator in your province. We'd like to thank our sponsors again, since without them, we couldn't have this fabulous show for you guys to tune into.
So thank you to the Canadian Agricultural Partnership through New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Island. See you next month.
Catch you guys later.